All right, it looks like we're live. Good afternoon, evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Fintech Open House. We are super excited to have everyone join us today once again. It's always nice to have members of the community join us. So welcome. Today we have our experts ready to speak to us, to answer all our interesting questions about preparing for a job in fintech and preparing for an interview, basically, to get the right job. So we're just going to start and we will introduce the speakers and we'll jump right into the questions. All right. The second, while I share my screen. Okay, once again, welcome to Fintech Open House. For those who are new or this is your first time joining the Fintech Open House, this is our once in a month session where we basically answer questions from the community about specific themes. We take questions from the community, we invite our experts, and then we answer those questions. This month, our theme is on getting a job, preparing for a job, preparing for interviews in the fintech space. And before we jump right in, we want to talk about one of our upcoming courses this coming weekend, June 26, June 27, and July 3. We have been advertising this for a while. We have been talking about this for a while. This is our Operations on Settlement and Reconciliation course, a very, very hands-on view into how to best run your operations and your settlement and your reconciliation operation in your fintech company. So if you're interested in joining us, we did an information session yesterday. You can go to our YouTube page and find it, and you can learn all you need to learn about the course. All right, that said, today we have unfortunately, one of our speakers has been unable to make it today. So we have two wonderful, amazing men who will be speaking to us today. First is Olamide. Olamide is a human resources expert who has spent a lot of time in the fintech space with over 13 years experience in HR, learning and development, talent management, recruitment, and so on and so forth. He has worked in some of the well-known fintech companies in Nigeria, and we're excited to have him here today. Olamide, do you want to say hi? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, thank you very much. So good evening all. It's nice to be here.
Right. And then we have Tunde Ogdo. Tunde is a fintech expert. I imagine that a lot of people have heard his name. With multiple years of experience, again, working in some of the well-known fintech companies in Nigeria. He has taken up multiple roles, including being the vice president role for agency banking and digital banking in TMAPT. Currently, Tunde runs DigiCore, and we're excited to have him here. Tunde, do you want to say hi?
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's nice to be here.
All right. Thank you both for joining us. As always, we are excited to have you. All right, let's jump right into it. Olamide, the first question goes to you. The question says, I'd love to know how to navigate my career in the fintech space. I am already working in the fintech company, but what can I do to continue to grow my skills and prepare myself for more senior roles or new opportunities in other companies? Olamide, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think it's actually a very good question in the sense that a lot of us aspire to be the best we can be. We aspire to be the most senior person in our chosen careers. But in my opinion, what the person asking this question is to first do is to start from the end. And what do I mean by starting from the end? You need to know where what I'd call your last bus stop is. Where do you want to carve your niche as a professional? What is the final destination for you? Once you know where that is, then you can then bring it backwards. When you're able to bring it backwards, it helps you determine what you need to do to get to the destination. And I'll shed some light. So let's assume that your plan is to become maybe a chief product officer. So the question is, what are those journeys? What are those decisions you need to make to becoming a successful chief product officer? So it depends on the role you are currently working in. If you are working in operations, for instance, you need to make sure that you need to understand the basis of why you do what you do. So operations people are always very burdened with fixing issues that is coming to them. But for someone that has an aspiration to become a product officer in the future, it's important that the person understands the product beyond just fixing it. He understands what problem the product solves in the market. The person needs to understand clearly how he or she can contribute whilst even being in the operations team. Once that is clear, then the person has started more or less introducing himself to product management without being in product management space. What that would lead to is when there's opportunity for product management, the person may not get the first interview, or may not succeed in the first interview, but that also gives the person an idea in the sense that what do I need to know before going for the next one and going for the next one. And before you know it, in my opinion, I think the person is already in that direction. The most important thing for me is start with the end in mind. You need to know clearly where you hope to end, and you need to make sure that your journey, your career choices, decisions you make should always take you towards that direction. In some cases, you have the immediate option doesn't appear as if it's taking you to that final destination. But as long as you are very clear in terms of how you intend to map your journey, sometimes it's good. So what do I mean by this? So let's assume you're in operations and you want to become a product manager, and there's no product management opportunity open up, but you have maybe a role of a business analyst open up, for instance. That might be a good next step to take rather than waiting for the product opportunity. The point at the end of the day is that you need to make sure that whilst you're making those career decisions, you're emphasizing on skills that will help you get the next job. It is not about getting the jobs today, because the jobs today is good, it pays your bills, you succeed, but that is not the destination. The destination is where you eventually want to get to. So you pay a bit more of an attention onto that particular job you're doing, especially with areas of the job that leads to that thing. So like I gave the example of a business analyst, for instance, it requires a lot of things, but you then, in my opinion, need to give an extra focus or attention to what has to do with product management in the future, so that you're just ready. Don't forget that when these opportunities come up, there are a lot of people that are also challenging or wants to take that opportunity that you have been considered for. So you need to make sure that you're head and shoulder above. And to do that, you need to make sure that you work harder, you study, you volunteer even to support the product team if they need support. You just need to make sure that you give your best to it. By the end of the day, have the end in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lamdi. So I guess follow-up question to that. Is there like a roadmap? Can a person who is looking to get this kind of senior roles think about building a roadmap for their career, say for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years? How would you advise that kind of person sets up a roadmap for their career?
Yeah, thank you very much. So the way I would rather advise it is don't set up the roadmap with positions in mind, and I'll try to explain why. And when I say positions, I mean specific jobs. So what I've learned over time is that businesses are first focused on their own strategy. And we all know that strategy comes before structure. And when the strategy changes, there's a chance that the structure will change. If structure changes and your aspiration is mapped to structure, then all of a sudden you are falling like a pack of cards. The most important thing, again, is look at that final destination. You need to identify all the skills required, and you look across the organization, what jobs will give you those skills. So even when they are restructuring, even when the business closes down, for instance, you can always find the skills you are looking for in other places. And that's why I'm saying that it should not be focused on the job title. you shouldn't be focused on positions. You should actually be focused on skills you get along the line, because at the end of the day, that's what matters.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, let's jump to our next question. Second one goes to Tunde. Tunde, the question says, there are various courses and programs that have sprung up to help people gain skills for the fintech world. We know some of them, a number of companies have sprung up in the last year, the last 2 years, basically helping people to learn new skills and be prepared for this world, this fintech world. As an employer, as a hiring manager, how much importance do you ascribe to these courses, these programs, these certifications when you're hiring people? And what courses would you suggest that a person enrolls for in order to be prepared for those kind of fintech roles?
All right. Thank you very much. So when it comes to this scenario, my thought is the certifications and the courses are typically a means to an end. The way we see certifications, the way I see certification is basically something to give some level of what's it called? Some level of evidence to the fact that you have an understanding of what you're doing, of you have an understanding of a certain body of knowledge. However, a lot of times I've come across several CEOs and several vice presidents that typically really don't care that much about the courses or the certification. Rather, what they will rather look out for is do you have the skills, and do you have what's it called? Do you have the knowledge, understanding, and as well as the experience of the certain role? However, one of the routes, one of the ways in which you can acquire such body of knowledge and such skills is largely through taking some certification courses. However, when you even take these certification courses, it goes beyond just having to read, take the course, pass the exams, and the likes. Basically, what we are looking for is, after you've taken these courses, can you apply them to real life situations? And basically, that's what everyone is really looking out for. A lot of times, we really don't care about the certification. We just want to be able to prove that you know what you're doing. However, in addition, rather, some organizations might give you some form of audience when they see that you have some certain certification, because you have a very large number of people who are basically applying for those. So it might give you a leg in, right? So it might give you an edge, it might give you some steps ahead. However, when you get those steps, the question is, when you're in, what can you prove? How do you stand out? And the fact that, do you really know your stuff? Basically, that's the way I see it.
Okay, so my follow-up to that is when I'm having conversations with people, you usually hear things like, oh, it's difficult for an entry-level professional to get a job. It's easier for, like, if you already have experience in the market. So if you compare like a mid-level professional with an entry-level person, do you ascribe different levels of importance to certifications or courses, or even like extra degrees, say like a master's degree or something like that? Or is it just you have to be focused on the experience?
Okay, so it depends. So depending on the role, and depending on the what's it called, the depending on the role, and depending on the demands and requirements of the role, because some certain roles require that you in some certain organizations you have some certain pedigree, right? And that pedigree basically expects that, or you have a master's either in one of the setting in the fields, possibly in the technical field of the product you're managing, or in the business field in general. So now so when you look at entry level requirements, most entry level requirements typically don't require you to have some certification. However, what they expect is largely that you have demonstrated in it is some capacity or the other, an ability to manage a product, or some ability as ability to carry out some of the tasks of a PM. Take for example things like being able to manage stakeholders, being able to document requirements, being able to interact with developers. And the fact is, a couple of people have basically been able to build these skills while they were in school, even before getting on the job. They started it out, oh, okay, this project is fun, let me get involved. And most times, a couple of them don't know that that's where they even got to pick up the PM skills from. So we've had, and there are a couple of them that have basically that I actually know in the industry today that started out that way. That started out in school writing stuff, and then it found themselves becoming PMs later in their careers, and they basically picked on and basically on the premise as, oh, okay, they basically found out that what they were doing back then in school was very synonymous to what they were actually doing in the real world. So for entry level, you really don't care about your certifications, your things like, and we really don't care. We basically just want to know that, okay, you have the attitude, you have the at least the basic skills. But when it gets to some certain roles, maybe a VP role, for example, or maybe a chief product officer, or maybe a chief strategy officer, depending on what it is, you might find out that you may need some certifications, you may need a master's degree. So that's the perspective from which I see that.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. So the next question is for you, Olamide. And I really like this one. So a number of job descriptions for roles in fintech are misleading. Sometimes you will see them asking for skills that are not realistic. If you give a good example of like job descriptions that ask you for, say, 12 years experience in Swift, for instance, and Swift in itself as a language has not even existed for that long. That's on one hand. On the other hand, there are some job descriptions that are like fintech roles, payment roles, but don't even list that in their job description until you get to the interview and they're asking you, oh, so how many years have you worked in fintech? How would you advise people to think about applying for these kind of roles? Do I have to be fully do I have to fully qualify for everything that the job is asking for and more? Or should I just wing it and hope that when I get to the interview, my good personality and my smiling face will win them over, and they will give me the job, even though I don't have the required skills? How do you advise people to think about job descriptions and job requirements before applying for roles?
Yeah, thank you very much. So for me, when you think about it, the employers would normally advertise for roles that they want. They are looking for candidates. In my opinion, candidates as well should also look out. They don't have to take anything they don't want. And when they see something that is interesting to them, I think they should give it their best shots. Now, the context that they're giving around the context around job descriptions not being fully correct. I understand that, and I'm not making excuses for it, but it's understandable, and I'll try to explain why. So what happens is that when a job is normally created, one of the prerequisites is to create a job description. But one of the things we've also learned is that in 2 to 3 years, a job evolves. Sometimes it evolves with the person working on the role. It may also be strategy changing that evolves the job. But in many cases, line managers don't take the pain to go back to updating the job description. And that's why sometimes you have the kind of mix-up we spoke about. Then there are also the mistakes you've spoken about asking asking candidates for skills that don't add up. So for instance, they are recruiting for a software engineer with say a software engineer with entry-level software engineer, and they're asking for someone that has maybe 5 years or 7 years experience writing C# or writing Golang or whatever it is they do these days. The truth of the matter is that those mistakes are meant to be made because, again, we can't really have that perfect system where everybody will do what they need to do per time. But the onus is actually on the candidates to be very deliberate. In many cases, jobs, especially in fintech, jobs are a bit universal for now because the fintech space is not very big. So normally when you say you're a software engineer, regardless of which fintech you are in, your jobs are more or less similar. If you say you're a product designer, regardless of the fintech you're in, is most likely going to be the same job. So though in some cases, yes, there'll be some differences, but the overall objective, and that's where I look at it. One of the things you will find out in a standard job description is what we call the job purpose or objective of the job. If you are clear of what the objective of the job is, and it's what you think you want to work on, then in my opinion, nothing should stop you from going ahead, because at the end of the day, the incumbent on the role actually defines how the role evolves. You can't be on a role for 2-3 years and your handwriting will not be on that role. So for me, clearly, one of the most important things to pay attention to is the job purpose or objective of the role. Once it aligns with what it is you want to do, then you can then go a bit further into the accountabilities where you have what you need the person to do. Remember what I said, and even you made the point around sometimes this is not as accurate as you need it to be, which is fine. But the most important thing is once the job objective aligns with what it is you want to do. I remember the point I made earlier about your career aspiration as well. Every career decision should always be linked to your end game. So if your end game is to become the CEO tomorrow, make sure that whatever move you're making is taking you towards that direction. We know that sometimes it's difficult, yes, but the truth of the matter is that we don't do things because it's easy. We do them because it's difficult and because we are going to get benefits at the end of the day. Now, sometimes when you look at roles that are very specific, in the sense that, and I'll be honest with you, I don't like those roles. Roles that maybe puts you in a corner. You can only have this role in either this kind of business company, or even in some cases, if it's not even company, it's maybe this kind of I would say subsector. And a good case is actually the fintech. Fintech is actually a subsector under technology. So you have some skills, for instance, that is specific to fintech. And for me, that in itself could be a problem if the mindset of the incumbent or the candidate is not right. I think it's always about understanding the reason why you do what you do. And everybody, whether you like it or not, you're a problem solver in the company you're working in. And as long as every sector would have problems to solve, you can always transfer your skills. It is about understanding the principle of problem solving before you take along. I remember when I was working in a fintech, I remember then when we were trying to look for software engineers, so they actually the first stage we just do is just to do problem solving tests only. We don't even check level of skills in languages or the likes. What we focus on is the ability to solve problems, because if you can solve problems, then your skills will be very relevant. So for me, any recommendation I'll give to a young person or even some people in their mid-career is always focus on your ability to solve problems, because that's what will always keep opening the doors for you. That's what will actually make you stand out. That's how you actually add values to the kind of business you want to go to. So at the end of the day, it is always about the motivation of what it is you want to do that will determine how successful you become whilst doing this. Thank you very much.
So if I still like a role for a director of product now, seeing as I'm still in this product management something, and I feel like I'm good at problem solving, but I'm not necessarily as like director level. I should still apply anyway, because the objective of the role points to the fact that this is where I want to go to in my career, and I think I can actually solve problems. I should go ahead and apply for that role.
Yes, I would advise. Though HR would not like you to apply because you are giving us a lot of work to do with shortlisting and the like. But the truth of the matter is that sometimes, from what I've also learned, sometimes some managers are not really 100% clear on who they want. But when they see who they want, they know this is the person I want. So when you know you're not very far from the role, so you don't have to be 2-3 years and be applying for a director of products. But if you are close, if you're already mid-level and you actually conquered, you have a good track record, you're working on a very successful, popular product in the market, and you think that anybody that sees your profile would want to have a chat, then I think you should put because what's the worst that would happen? Two things. Number one, you don't get called. And when you get called, you would go through the interview process and they won't pick you. And when you also don't get selected, it's also a learning point because you also learn the process. You know what it is they're looking for. And what that helps you do is that in your work way, the way you work over the next few years or months, you're paying attention to what you were assessed for that you didn't do quite well in. Because again, at the end of the day, businesses recruit for skills, they recruit for attitude, they recruit for personnel, they recruit for a lot of things. And at the end of the day, it is what you have they will recruit for. So you need to make sure that you have as much things as possible, so that the hiring manager would always see a reason to want to proceed with you as a candidate.
All right, fantastic. All right, so I hope everybody has heard that. Apply for those roles and hope for the best. The worst that will happen is they won't call you back. And if they call you back and you flop the interview, well, it's a learning point for you. All right, let's go to, I believe, what should be our final question of today. For you, Tunde, this question says, I do not have a background in fintech or even tech for that matter. My background is in engineering, and I imagine that it's not like computer engineering or information engineering, this kind of computer related engineering. My background is in engineering, but I'm looking to transition into fintech. I don't imagine that there's a specificity to the kind of role this person is looking for. They just want to work in the industry. How can I showcase my skills to make them applicable for fintech roles? This speaks more to, what should I say, at the interview, that would show them that I have transferable skills from engineering into this fintech world that I'm looking to get into.
All right. Okay. So I would like to answer these questions practically. So first of all, I'll give examples. So I've met about 2 guys. I met one who used to work at a food, what's it called? A food company. He used to be a factory worker here in Nigeria. And we met once, and he said that he was referred by a friend to me who, while I was working, I think in a bank or at InterSwitch, and I wanted to learn how to start programming. And we met, then I basically now put him through, I basically had to guide him to say, okay, these are the things you go do, read and things like that. Then he used to earn, I think, about 120,000 naira monthly back then. This was about 6 years ago or 7 years ago at one of the food processing companies here in Lagos. So he took some books and started learning how to write programs and things like that. Then he got a job. He got an entry-level job as a programmer after getting to read some of these, take some of these courses and start reading this book. And then he took a pay cut and was now took a developer role, was being paid about 60,000 naira monthly back then. Today, I think he earns roughly about 700,000 naira monthly, and that's apart from the fact that his accommodation is covered and his bonuses are also very fat. And he works in one of the payments companies today as a software developer. I also know of another person that basically started at the same route, used to work at UBA as a marketer. And then back in the days when CC Hub used to be hot, back then, he quit his job and he just started going all to CC Hub daily and then began to hone his skills. Today, he's also a software developer, I think, in a fintech company as well. Earning roughly about the same thing, about 5 or 6 years. This whole thing started about 5 or 6 years ago. So basically, it's very easy for you to get into the fintech space. It's extremely easy as long as you're willing to pay the price, which is largely learning. And the truth is, the knowledge to get into fintech is largely democratized. You can get online, take courses on these things. And fact is, there are a lot of startups that are springing up every now and then, and even established companies that basically that also need entry level entry level staff, and they are willing to take people who are willing to learn, and there are lots of them, largely because one, they are trying to reduce cost, and two is they're also trying to see how they can grow their talent pool as well. So the way I see it, to get in without any background, is you have to pay the price of paying attention, which is largely you have to take your time to really read these things or take the courses or take the learnings. And after you've taken the learnings, you have to look for ways to practice these things. So you could start by starting a small project. It might seem quite insignificant for a start. It might seem as though there is you're not making any headway, you're not making any progress. But the fact is, all the mistakes and all the learnings that you're getting from that little project are basically they are very applicable rather in in the market. And that's how people got in. Even I got in that way. So I didn't have a background in tech as well. I was a similar path to this. So I took a similar path as well. So it's very easy to get in. The only way is the easiest way is get the knowledge yourself, either by taking courses, by getting to read, but whatever it is that you do, ensure that you find a way to express that knowledge, either by taking projects as well. Some you have to take for free, some basically, but it's very possible, and it's the entry path is just take get the knowledge, look for somewhere to apply it, and once you've applied it once or twice, package your CV and then look for the next job, your dream job. That's the way I see it.
Fantastic. So what's the place of like networking and communities and like cozying up to people who are already in this industry that you're looking to get into?
Yes, that also helps. However, a lot of times people typically would prefer to help people who are already self-starting. So there should be a desire, and there should be apart from a desire, there should be a clear evidence of action towards one's desires. And when those things are seen, it's easy for the strength of the network to kick in. It's very easy. Of course, the network is important, but more fundamental, more important than the network is that itself. Because the truth is, even in the country today, where we here in Nigeria, we don't have enough hands in tech.
Yeah.
It's real. So there's actually a very huge market for the skills.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Olamide, anything you want to add to that?
So I think Tunde has done a good job explaining what I would have said. The truth of the matter is that when you also look at it, it's always about, my opinion at least, it's always about looking for problems to solve. Today, the fintech space appears to be where we have a lot of the problems. I know that some other areas are also coming up, but because the fintech space today has a lot of problems, and it's also creating a lot of rooms for a lot of roles. So now you don't have to necessarily be a techie person to be in fintech. You can actually work with the UI UX guys. You can work with marketing. You can actually, there's still other things you can do in fintech without actually being a core tech person, because again, at the end of the day, there's the site that fulfills the demand, or rather that generates the demand for the product that the guys at the engineering side are building. So for me, clearly, it's about the aspiration of the candidate themselves. If you want to be a core engineer in the future, yes, it's good that we start learning the simple skills that is required today. You pick even maybe not necessarily even core engineering, maybe it's just the big data, and where you just need the simple Python, Golang, or whatever it is you need to run your work in big data that is not as core, as deep as the normal engineering guys. And if you want to also support them from the operation side of things, yes, you need some level of technical expertise, but it's not as rigorous as being on the engineering side. At the end of the day, from what I've learned, it is actually the ability of the candidates to be open to learn, to be open to be flexible, to be open to decide quickly what it is they want to do, and are ready to pay the price that it takes, because everything comes at a price. Usually it takes away your time, takes away some of your comforts until you get your acts together. And once that is done, then it's almost cruising all the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Olamide, there's a question for you following up to the initial question you had answered about job requirements. The question says, when some of these recruiters don't pick you after the interview process, they do not say why most of the time. It becomes difficult to know what they were looking for in the first place. And I know that that's common. Many recruiters don't. They just give you this cut and paste response, or we will not be moving forward with you at this time, which is really frustrating, by the way. How would you advise a candidate to move forward without concrete feedback about what they can improve on?
Yeah, thank you very much. So it's actually ideal that, not ideal, so it's actually expected that in this case, the candidate gets a proper feedback to know how to proceed. But because of the numbers of candidates and the rigorous process and the likes that happens, candidates really would not get feedback. In some cases that I know, it's only when you're successful you get the feedback, and that's which is interesting. Because at the end of the day, the feedback is part of development for the new employee now. So the person needs to know what he needs to improve on. As a matter of fact, in some cases, it can actually form the basis of their individual development plan for the year. That is the feedback from the recruitment process. But for those that are not taking, it becomes a lot more difficult because the process of actually working on feedback is actually sometimes 40 to 1 hour, 40 minutes to 1 hour. And the question is, do I have this time to give to 30, 40, 50 people that I'm not going to take? The answer is usually no. I'm not telling you it's right, but it is no. And now the question then is, how do I know where I'm failing? I have a belief that when you are not doing well, it's only if you are deceiving or we are deceiving ourselves. So you know clearly when they ask a question and you are trying to wing it, understand, you know that it is idea you're using, it is not where you're strong. So for me, it is those kind of questions you should focus on. And in some cases, you would have actually had a very good interview and they won't call you back. Yes, possibly because someone else has done better. They are just looking for top three and you're the fourth or you're the fifth. So they won't call you. And that doesn't mean you've not done anything good enough. It may actually not be based on the performance of the interview. They can actually compare, include the profile of the candidate. So for instance, you may be the least qualified person in terms of the profile, but they still put you forward for the interviews to just be sure. But after the interviews, your feedback is not bad, but it's not amazing. So sometimes they would feel like it's safer to rely on people that have track record or people that have experience in the kind of roles they're looking for. So they won't get back to you. But when you're in an interview process and you're struggling, and that's why it's very important that we have a very open mind to things. We are not as defensive as some of us might want to be. You don't have to explain yourself because truth matter is that when you're trying to explain yourself, what you are doing is you are not admitting that there's room for improvement, that you're not going to improve. And you go for 4, 5 different interviews and you'd have similar feedback. So for me, clearly, when you do this kind of interviews and you don't get to hear back from them and you've not succeeded, all you just need to do is ask yourself. Sometimes it's not actually in the content of your feedback, of your responses. It's actually in maybe your body language, maybe in the way you've packaged your responses. And you would always know. You would know if you want to be honest with yourself, if you want to be very straightforward. So for me, to just round it off, it is important that we develop ourselves to be able to tell ourselves the truth. Understand? And the truth is when you do poorly in an assessment or not good enough in an assessment, you should know. If you do not know, you need to go maybe come to payment log for a self-awareness training because it is very important that people know that. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much, Olamide. Thank you so much, Tunde. We really, really, really appreciate both of you coming on today. This has been fantastic for me personally. It has been a great learning experience. So thank you. Folks, there are a bunch of nuggets about this session on our social media pages at the Payment Log on Twitter and the Payment Log on LinkedIn. Go check it out. And there will be a replay of this on YouTube as well in case you want to come back to some of the things that have been spoken about. Cool. Any final words from either of you before we call it an evening?
Yeah, so I can just so for me, I think for people that want to come into fintech, I think is actually currently bubbling. I think they should make their mind quickly, be ready to make all the sacrifices it requires. Sometimes it's training, sometimes it's like the Tunde's example, sometimes it's pay cut, sometimes it's actually inconvenience of relocation. Whatever it is you need to give it quickly so that you can fail quickly and move on, or you can succeed quickly as well. Then in terms of people that are also managers or people that might be listening to this, the way you support your team members is very important in terms of their career aspirations and the likes. Yeah, they are number one, whether they want to admit it or not. You are one of their role models, so you need to make sure that you are role model that they can really look up to in terms of their career decisions. They should be able to talk to you about their career aspirations. You should also be able to guide them appropriately, not selfishly, because we've also seen that a lot of managers guide their team members selfishly, in the sense that they don't want them to leave their team. Yeah, they're so good, they don't want them to leave their team, so that doesn't affect what that means also is that it just means that you're selfish, and we all know how it ends at the end of the day. These people will get somewhere else and they will leave the business entirely. If you don't let them leave to other units in the business where there are opportunities, they will leave when you can't tell them they can't go. Thank you.
Thank you. Today, anything from you?
I think Molamide said it all, so I'm done here.
All right.
Thank you.
Fantastic. All right. And that's it on this month's edition of Fintech Open House. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us. Thank you to our panelists. This was a great session, and we appreciate you. And we hope that when we ask you to come back, you will come back and spend time with us again. Cool. That's it. Thank you, and have a good evening.